Good morning. This is GA 6101 Readings in Philippine History. Today's topic under social, political, economic, and cultural issues in Philippine history will be the biography of some prominent Filipinos. For the learning outcomes, at the end of the module, you're expected to know the biography of selected prominent Filipinos, understand the significance of their contributions to the society, and appreciate the works of the selected prominent Filipinos. A prominent Filipino is said to be heroines or heroes who change Philippine history. Or prominent Filipino could be a Filipino who has exemplary works or has the biggest contribution in the society. And when you will be asked to name some prominent Filipinos, and one of the prominent Filipinos who comes to your mind is, of course, Jose Rizal, who is one of our national heroes who used pluma to awaken the Filipinos against the conquerors during the colonization of Spain. Also, you would think of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Aguinaldo, and Emilio Jacinto, and most recently, Antonio Luna. Antonio Luna's heroism is relived because of the recent film about his life. But the Philippines does not have an official list of national heroes. Yes, there has been attempts to come up with one, but the legislatures deferred finalizing a list to avoid a surge of proclamations and debates involving historical controversies about heroes. But still, in your primary education, the textbooks and flashcards were able to ingrain their names in our minds or in your minds. And when you think of the personalities, you might see some pattern, and they're mostly men. And history books would often devote entire chapters to the achievements and adventures of our male heroes. And you would notice that our female heroines are often bunched into one section, treated as footnotes or afterthoughts, despite also fighting for the nation's freedom. And hopefully, in time, Philippines' life list of brave Filipina heroines whose actions deserve to be remembered. And these women are more than just tokens for their female representation. And today we will try to remember their names and their achievements. Teresa Magbanwa is known as the Visayan Joan of Arc. And Teresa Magbanwa was originally a teacher who received a degree in education from a school in Manila, that she married a wealthy businessman who owned large plots of land, which Teresa Magbanua was able to help cultivate. And during this time, she developed her skills in horseback riding and marksmanship. And Magbanua was relatively well to do when she first became a hero. And there was no official record about her personal background, but she was born anywhere from 1863 to 1871. And yes, the family was wealthy enough to afford a college education. And also afterwards, in 1894, she earned a master's degree from the University of Santo Tomas and became a teacher in her hometown of Potota. And as I've said, she married Alejandro Balderas, a wealthy landowner. And in 1898 was the year the revolution reached Iloilo, that Teresa Magbanwa's hometown. And Magbanwa's family was firmly embedded with the Katipunan, that upon learning that her brothers joined the uprising against the Spaniards, she persuaded her uncle General Prefecto Poblador to let her join the Katipunan's women chapter in Panay. And she had the courage of joining her, being an experienced horse rider and marksman. And at first, her husband was against her joining the Katipunan. And also, even her uncle wasn't too keen either for her to join the Katipunan. But the general agreed, making Teresa Magbanwa the first and only woman to lead troops in the Visayas during the revolution. That she was given command of battalion of Bolo troops. And her patriotic spirit helped her successfully lead a group of Bolo troops during the Battle of Barrio and also the Battle of Sapong Hills, which were instrumental to the liberation of Iloilo City. And then later on, she joined the guerrilla forces in fighting against the Americans in Haro, Iloilo. That she continued to fight for the country's independence until the Japanese occupation, when she sold all her belongings to help fund the guerrilla movement. And yes, Teresa Magbanwa is one of the few who fought for the Philippines against all of the country's main aggressors, Spain, the United States, and Japan. The next one is Josefa Llanes Escoda. And you would always see her in our 1,000 peso bill banknotes, and she is pictured as a smiling face clad in Filipiniana outfit. And Josefa Llanes Escoda is one of the two women to appear on the current series of Philippine peso notes. And you know, this honor does not go without merit, as she was certified social worker, a suffragette, a civic leader, and war heroine. And as the eldest of seven children, she had to help her mother take care of her siblings after the death of her father in 1918, and all while studying to obtain a high school teacher certificate from the University of the Philippines. And so Josefa Llanes Escoda went to the United States several times to further help with her social work. That after graduation, she trained in social welfare at the New York School of Social Work, and during that stay, she also represented the Philippines in speaking engagements in the International House and the Women's International League for Peace. That her second visit to the US, which was meant for Boy Scout training, she used to train young women teachers from the public and private sector to become Girl Scout teachers. And Chef Rihanna Escoda was known to promote Philippines. That whenever she was accepted in or whenever she was accepting speaking engagements, and she would always practice to wear a Filipiniana dress during her lectures to promote the Philippines. And when World War II broke out, Skoda's involvement in aiding prisoners of war and stranded women and children led to her arrests, torture, and eventual execution at the hands of the Japanese. Now, as an active member of the suffrage movement of the Philippines, Josefa Llanes Escoda was quoted as saying that the modern woman is no longer the wife that clings. She, meaning the modern woman, now helps the husband. And women's demand for independence is motivated by their desire to help their husbands in governmental affairs, which always required the moderation and wisdom of her leadership. Continues through her legacy, that A street and a building have been named after her, and a monument has been dedicated to her memory. She is also named after a road in Ilocos Norte and was depicted on the current 1,000 peso bill as one of the three Filipinos martyred by the Japanese armed forces. And also, the Girl Scouts of the Philippines pay homage to Josefa Llanes Escoda every September 20 by celebrating her birth anniversary with activities that create further awareness of her martyrdom and contribution to youth development. Another heroine is Gabriella Cilan. And Gabriella Cilan is perhaps the most well-known among all the Filipino heroines. But she is almost always mentioned in tandem with her husband, Diego. Since their achievements are usually written about together, many forget that Gabriella Silang had her own fair share of heroic acts as the first Filipina to lead an uprising against a foreign power. And Gabriella Silang was known to be a fearless Ilocana warrior who assumed her husband's role as a commander of rebel troops after Diego Silang's assassination in September or in 1763. That Gabriella Silang rallied fighting forces, including the native ethnic people, to carry on the war against Spain in their home province of Ilocos, that launching guerrilla attacks against Spanish garrisons. That because of these caused the Spanish soldiers to fear Gabriela Silang's. And for her final battles at the liberation of Vigan, she led over 2,000 men to go against an army of over 6,000 Spanish soldiers backed by a powerful artillery. But the battle proved unsuccessful for the general, so she and 80 remaining troops retreated to unexplored regions of Abra, where they were eventually captured. The Spanish made her witness the public executions of her men before publicly hanging the general herself in September 1763. And despite the loss, Gabriella Silang is still recognized for her immense courage in fighting for the independence of Ilocos. And so Gabriella Silang was widowed twice in her lifetime. At 20, she was forced to marry a wealthy old woman who passed away after 3 years, and it was after his death that Gabriella Silang met Diego Silang, who was a mail carrier at that time. Having passed away only in 2016, Corporal Magdalena Leones remained to be one of the lesser known World War II veterans, even though she is the only Asian woman to have been awarded the Silver Star in World War II by the United States. Magdalena Leones was born in the mountains of Kalinga, and she was the daughter of an evangelical missionary. And during the time, she refused to surrender after the fall of Bataan, and she was in prison for 5 months. And during this time, she taught herself how to speak Nihongo, a skill she utilized to help save the lives of other Filipinos captured by the Japanese. And after encountering Colonel Russell Volkman of the United States Armed Forces in the Philippines, North Luzon, Magdalena Leones agreed to serve as a special agent. And using her church connections and her Ilonggo speaking skills, she was able to carry important intelligence data, vital radio parts, and medical supplies through Japanese held territory. And though she knew that capture could result in torture and execution, she powered through and continued to serve her country, earning her the moniker of the Lioness of Filipino guerrilla agents. And Magdalena Leones was caught several times, but was able to escape each time due to her wits and her sweet talk. And she died on June 16, 2016 in Richmond, California, when she was 95 years old, and her body was flown to the Philippines and was buried at the libingan ng mga bayani. Another Filipino heroine is Melchor Aquino de Ramos. And Melchor Aquino was known to be a Filipino revolutionary who became known as Tandang Sora. And because of her age during the Philippine Revolution, she was called Elder Sora or Tandang Sora. And also, she was known as the Grand Woman of the Revolution and the Mother of Balintawak for her contributions. And in her native town, Tandang Sora operated a store, which became a refuge for the sick and wounded revolutionaries. She fed, she gave medical attention to, and encouraged the revolutionaries with motherly advice and prayers. And so secret meetings of the Katipuneros or the revolutionaries were also held at her house. Thus, she earned the names Woman of Revolution, the Mother of Balintawak, Mother of the Philippine Revolution, and also Tandang Sora. It was believed that Tandang Sora and her son, Juan Ramon, were present in the cry of Balintawak and were witnesses to the tearing up of the cedulas. And when the Spaniards learned about her activities and her knowledge to the whereabouts of the Katipuneros, she was interrogated, but she refused to divulge any information. And she was then arrested by the Guardia Civil and was deported to Guam or the Marianas Islands, where she and a woman named Segunda Puentes were placed under house arrest in the residence of Don Justo Dunca. But after the United States took control of the Philippines in 1898, Tandang Sora, like other exiles, returned to the Philippines in 1903. That she was believed to have died at her daughter Saturnina's house in Banlat on February 19, 1919 at the age of 107. And her remains were first interred at the Mausoleum of the Veterans of the Revolution at the Manila North Cemetery. These were then transferred to the Himlayang Filipino Memorial Park in Quezon City in 1970 and finally at the Tandang Sora National Shrine in 2012. And so as a token of gratitude, a Quezon City barangay and a road were named after Tandang Sora. Also, her profile was placed in the Philippines 5 centavo coin from 1967 to 1992, and she was the first Filipina who appears on a Philippine peso banknote. And in this case, the 100 peso bill from the English series 1951 to 1966. Also, Tandang Sora Street in the city of San Francisco, California, USA is named in her honor. Now, these names are only some of the many notable Filipinos whose Filipinas, for that matter, whose achievements deserve to be credited. And so, yeah, that's it. That's all about the topic for today about the prominent Filipino heroines.